Hey everyone, it's Debbie Potts, and I'm in my sauna office today. I just had a podcast and thought I'd do a solo one, and I'm going to go for a walk after this, as it is almost my lunchtime movement break. As I like to say, breakfast, lunch, dinner are movement times, not necessarily signal us when to eat, is more when to move. So if we could switch the mindset of breakfast, lunch, dinner to eating to moving, maybe eating and then moving, but getting more movement. I'm not doing my master swim workout. I like to go at lunchtime during the week. I'm going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursdays, try running at lunchtime, just 30 to 45 minutes. Today, it might be a walk with some runs that are down the downhill sections of our neighborhood because it's 90 degrees and very humid here in North San Diego. So I'm hot already, and running 90 degrees is not always great to do. So I'm fueling up. I have my beam minerals I just took, and I have some adaptogen MTB powder stuff I put in my water to get some energy. And I wanted to talk to you before I go for my break on how to use genetics to figure out personalizing your workout fitness program. So I've shared this a few different videos. I don't know if you've done any genetics or interested. This is the DNA company, and I just think it's so helpful for me when I'm coaching my clients to look at their genetics as the DNA company or Wild Health does a clarity report and has the report with their blood chemistry markers on it as well. But sadly, the company just got bought, and I was hoping, as I just finished a 6-month course with them, precision medicine fellowship course, that I'd be able to use Clarity Report and have the blood chemistry panel and microbiome in here. But the new change in ownership, they're not doing that anymore. So I'm very depressed. But they will have, I can do Clarity Reports for my clients, but I don't think they're gonna, I don't know how I'll do the blood labs. I'll have to do that separately. So I did a interview with Matt Dawson, one of the co-founders of Wild Health, and he's been on Ben Griefield's podcast for years. That's how I learned about him. And Brad Kearns, I know, did this program too. So I find it very helpful to get this report on your nutrients. So if you look at my report, we'll do a podcast with the doctor and health coach together over mine, but just how we really need to personalize your genetic predisposition to fat, carbs, saturated fats, as well as to your recovery, repair, your exercise. You can see my carb intolerance, these FTO genes. I've got all of them. Can you believe that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Fat, obesity genes. So if I didn't exercise, probably why my mom and dad, don't, they're not listening. My dad passed away. He's sitting here on my counter here. I probably always have to work hard not to gain weight, and it's really hard for me to lose weight. So luckily I'm very active and been doing marathons and triathlons. I started when I was 25 years old. And so I've always been into exercise and aerobics when I was in high school, and track and field when I was younger, high jump. I won a gold medal, by the way, in 5th grade for best in British Columbia for high jump, but never did it again. But I was always active, is my point. Now, if you look at this marker on the video, saturated fat intolerance, I'm in the middle as well. I'm not all the way to the right, but I need to pay attention. So saturated fat may impact my heart disease markers. I just had a talk with the health coach, Steve, the other day on this. This is what I need to look out for, especially that my dad passed away from heart disease, kidney failure, which I swear is related to insulin, but they never tested his insulin, and a type of cancer. But I want to work on this podcast to help you get a personalized program. This is what I do for my business, coaching clients how to be their best self and thrive as they age, as well as perform your best in races, events now. But we really should be focused on when you're older, how are you going to be showing up to life? So it's all about the choices we make now at our middle age to improve the future self. So if I could take this information and know, okay, look at my cholesterol, super high, but is that looking at Feldman and other people doing the cholesterol with keto people, if it's, does that matter? And so anyways, I'm rambling, but I had a talk with them yesterday. Does saturated fat impact my cholesterol? But do I care about cholesterol? Is that really a concern of mine for heart disease? I rather look at other markers that are not on this page, like triglycerides, which are low, 57. My LDL is 139, is a little bit higher, but I want to look at my LP little a, my APOB. And so I need to go hopefully next week. I'm trying to get my blood chemistry panel scheduled in the morning. So I need to pay attention. Also, I think based on my genetics, I tend to be more prone to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, even though no one in my family, my mom said, has ever had type 2 diabetes. But to me, it's more that no one has been diagnosed with insulin resistance because no one tested that in the past. Now, I have a high 1A1C, even though I don't eat a lot of carbohydrates. So, why is that? Is it part of my metabolic inflexibility? My glucose, I just wore a glucose monitor for 2 14-day CGMs. I am prioritizing protein. I'm not a strict carnivore, but I try to focus, especially weekdays, on eating meat-based diet. I need to look at foods that I might be reactive to. So think anything that is a stress will raise your glucose. So A1C, does that really matter? My fasting glucose is a 90, so that's not a red flag. HOMA-IR, triglyceride HDL ratio. So I'm looking at preventative health. This is a good example of, am I fit and healthy from the inside out at a cellular level? Are there any changes I need to make so I can be my best self? Cholesterol, I should pay attention, but we'll go to another page. It's more my APOB markers, which I need to get my next test. Macros, I focus on clients with protein first, especially as we're aging. We want to make sure we're adjusting our fats to go with the proteins naturally, and more of an animal-based diet for most of us. If you're plant-based, it's a little more confusing. Hit that protein goal with healthy fats to feel full and satiated between meals. So I'm eating now breakfast, and my lunch is more my lunch dinner at 2 o'clock. And I don't really eat a dinner during the week, but I'm trying to make sure I get enough protein. So maybe I have to do more essential amino acids from Keon or Body Health and get those. I was taking 10 tablets of essential aminos before bed. Anyways, getting enough protein is a challenge, but it is possible. Now, carbohydrates, we talk about timing those around your workouts. And so if we look at my genetics, my insulin score is moderate. They suggest standard kind of fasting, 16-8 for long fasting. I don't think that's a good suggestion for a busy female athlete at my stage, but that's what I try to do, 12 hours. I don't try to do strict 16-8 as I used to be so rigid on fasting. OMAD once a week for sure, or even more than that. I was doing like a 20-hour fast and then just eating in a 4-hour window for many years and doing a 16-8 for sure. I'd be, really timing it. And then as you're fat adapted, when you're eating a lot of food or you're not so hungry, but also I think when you're doing OMAD, you tend to, or I was, like eating way too much in that window. And I know I've heard other people say that. So I'd rather focus on protein and muscle building as I get older. And so me, as well as I've heard many other people in this space have talked about making sure they're eating enough of protein spread out that 3 to 4 hour window so we can stimulate muscle protein synthesis, getting the essential amino acids with that essential leucine threshold we're hitting in that 3 to 4 hour marker. Okay. So anyways, this was just an overview. I'm genetically sensitive to carbohydrates, should reduce simple carbohydrates, consider a low carb, high fat diet. I tolerate fat well and consume fat as desired, but I do not tolerate saturated fat as well. So I've been doing more Mediterranean diet, more essential olive oil over doing saturated fat from bacon, fat, and coconut oil. I have 2 risk alleles for the insulin resistance. This SNP is associated with increased risk for insulin resistance and diabetes in response to a diet that is high in fat. And so this is where, look at all these instructions I forgot to tell Wild Health. This is very contradictory. It says, I'm sensitive to carbs. I need to reduce simple carbs and do a low carb, high fat diet. Next paragraph, I need to do a high carb, low fat diet. So what is it? So this is where we need to take this kind of standard information, look at, hey, my genetics say I'm intolerant to carbohydrates that are simple, which I shouldn't do anyway. No one should. Complex carbohydrates, nature's carbs, focus on good saturated fats, good healthy fats. Limiting saturated fats made me do more of an olive oil fat, or say if that matters, because that's a whole nother conversation. Does saturated fat, cholesterol matter for heart disease? Now, if I have two SNPs for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes in a responsive diet high in fat, and that's mitigated high carb, low fat diet, that all together. We need to just track, course correct, and experiment. So that's where I think this is very incorrect. So metabolism methylation is a big one about folate and choline. So you'll hear a lot about the MTHFR SNP and looking at, am I getting the right folate, not doing folic acid, which is basically processed, and naturally we want to get that folate. And then the choline pathway. So talking about choline and folate in our diet, that's kind of the methylation cycle. Now, if you measure your homocysteine, mine ideally should be below 8 or below 7, and mine's 8.5. So we want to look at my genetic SNPs, correlate that data with choline-related labs as liver markers AST and ALT, and correlate that with folate-related labs as B12 and folate measurement itself, and TMAO labs, it didn't come up, but my total cholesterol. So we kind of look at all this together. I think it's interesting. Do I need to supplement with more choline? So the recommendations, I have reduced methylation because of the homocysteine level being higher. So how do I do that? I can take a methylated B complex. I'm trying not to do as many capsules, or rather liquid supplements. So there's some different options, but Quicksilver is an example of methyl B complex that I'll take in the morning rather than a tablet or capsule. I have an elevated need for choline, and I've heard this before. So I can get a phosphatidylcholine supplement liquid. The Seeking Health has one. You can look at my full script link on my link tree for access to my full script account, get a discount. But choline is in eggs. So getting more eggs that are not overcooked. I don't eat liver, but liver has a lot of the folate B vitamins. Fish, if you get enough fish, dairy, green vegetables. So looking at getting creatine is also part of that methylation cycle. There's a relationship of choline and creatine that I need to get into. So other metabolism markers, vitamins, and micronutrients talk about my need for omega-3s, vitamin D, vitamin A, B12, vitamin E, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory. So then it'll give me vitamin micronutrient recommendations. I have 2 risk alleles. So that means I'm more increased in sensitivity to gluten and wheat. And if you have symptoms as bloating, diarrhea, nausea, brain fog after consuming wheat and gluten, consider removing and reducing these. I've said multiple times, I do have a wheat sensitivity on the Vibrant Wellness Wheat Zoomer is a great test to do to find out if you do. And that's looking at my genetics and lab tests to prove that, yes, I need to avoid all sources of wheat and ideally cross reactivity to wheat with molecular mimicry, which means, what are the other ones? Oats, eggs, other markers that cross react. Dairy is always on the list, but I'm not so good at not doing any cheese or heavy cream in my coffee. So other one, a good one to look at for athletes, fast caffeine metabolizer. So I have the gene CYP1A2 for fast caffeine metabolizer. So that can be good for athletic performance, caffeine prior to a workout, which I do have a few sips of coffee and more so afterwards, but try to limit caffeine later in the day to prevent disruption of sleep, which I definitely do. I try to encourage that to my clients. Don't drink coffee after 12 o'clock. So then the vitamins and micronutrients recommendations based on my genetic SNPs, 1 risk allele. So I'm looking more of 2. Would I have 2 risk alleles? So my CYP to R, that's conversion of D3 into active form. So this is a great one to look at. If you have low vitamin D and you're supplementing, I may need assistance getting the vitamin D levels up, because even though I do master swimming in an outdoor pool year round, I'm exposed, obviously just wearing a swimsuit or bikini, that my vitamin D should be 60 to 80, but I have to work harder to increase that vitamin D. So I've reduced conversion of vitamin D3 into active form. So higher levels of vitamin D3 supplementation may be required to achieve adequate circulating levels in the blood. So this is why I love doing genetic reports with clients, because what if you're struggling getting your vitamin D levels up on your blood chemistry panel and you don't know why? You might have to supplement more. Same with like me with choline. Now, other ones here to point out, this one, two risk alleles, so that means one from each parent. This SNP indicates lower likelihood to see large triglycerides reduction from fish oil. So my triglyceride levels were not elevated, but if I had high triglycerides and took a lot of essential fatty acids, fish oil supplementation, I probably wouldn't see a big difference based on this research. And then that one. So anyways, this is kind of what we do with the Wild Health Report called Clarity Report. And then we can identify based on genetics. And then if we can combine this with a blood test to find your food sensitivities, what are your kryptonite foods, your superfoods? So what's optimal? Caffeine, I'm a fast caffeine metabolizer, as we just said. What I need to look out for and avoid: gluten sensitivity, wheat and gluten, breads, crackers, not recommended to replace gluten-free foods, are usually crap. So don't do gluten-free and then try gluten-free foods, because usually not good options. They're processed. Inflammation, omega-6s, that's just one allele. So that's just another example. I know there's some good ones for you. Elevated liver enzymes. So I look at AST and ALT on your blood chemistry panel. And when I do people's comprehensive blood panel, I put them in my report for my FDN. We have a blood analysis. So look at what does this mean if it's higher or lower. So high choline foods, eggs, fish, dairy, green vegetables, better to take creatine for this purpose if your TMO level is high. So I didn't have TMO measured, but that is what I've been doing, creatine. Anyways, 1 scoop a day in my water, creatine with 1 scoop is 5 grams. Also, another liver enzyme was elevated, so getting choline. So even though I've been doing a lot of liver detox support, eating good foods, because of genetics, I probably need to supplement with choline supplement. And I have a phosphatidylcholine seeking health liquid form I can take, or I just finished these capsules I had. Now, dietary folate, we want to always start with nutritional therapy first. And I think higher in folate if you're doing plant-based, leafy greens, cilantro, arugula, chards, watercress, rutabaga. But there's also a lot of meat-based. If you're more of a carnivore meat-based diet, eggs, well, liver is not here, but other folate, they say beans, eggs, avocado, nuts, and seeds. But I know if you're carnivore, maybe do eggs, but not the other stuff. So superfoods, I have a high genetic need for choline, right? So I probably need to supplement. I'm afraid to do too many eggs, even though I know a lot of people do a dozen eggs a day. I feel like I'm sensitive, high maintenance person. My body is, so I need to not get a food sensitivity from eggs. I'll have them every once in a while. Now, exercise, how can we figure out your workout program? So I love looking at genetics. I've shared this report before, exercise recovery genomics and labs. My strength versus endurance training, rate of recovery, and intensity tolerance. So we can look at all these markers. So that's a whole lot of genetic SNPs we're looking at to see which ones show what I do. So I have slow recovery. So that probably helps me understand if I am writing a workout schedule, pretend I'm the client, I need more days cross training in between running. Running is very stressful on my body, especially since my adrenal exhaustion. I've never gotten my running back. It really takes a toll on my body. So I think running once a week is probably beneficial. As I said, I'm going running next, but it'll probably be a walk with the jog. I don't have the running I used to do. Now I used to do, I'm not bragging, I'm just saying how I was a runner. I could do a 3:12 Boston Marathon. Was my best time. A 3:17 was the next year. I could run a 3:45 marathon and of Ironman and place top 5 in races all the time. That is a long time ago. I don't blame my age that I can't do that anymore. Something happened to me at a cellular level. I assume mitochondria dysfunction, and all my hormones impact that, and low hormones can impact that recovery. But whatever, I just think slower recovery for me. Some people recover faster. So you can take that information. We can figure out your workout program. Strength versus endurance. I'm kind of almost in the middle, but more towards strength. Low intensity versus high intensity. I am very good at going long time. Forrest Gump, just go forever, zone 2. I've done that since I started in my 20s doing long fundraiser tri-island bike ride that was 3 days. It was my first bike ride, and I did Seattle to Portland bike ride. I do ride around Mount Rainier one day. All these rides I could do without being tired. I just was naturally good at that. So I think that's more my genetics at doing low intensity. High intensity is a challenge for me. I don't do very well at the sprint intervals, but I'm working on that as an aging athlete. So that's how we can help figure out, again, different pieces of the puzzle together, that we want to collect all this data. Personalized exercise program. What are your recommendations? Genetic training preferences favor power and strength training at 60%. Recovery time is intermediate at 30%. That means I'll need at least 1 or 2 days of recovery per week. Be mindful. One risk allele for having a lower resting metabolic rate and cardiorespiratory fitness due to decreased mitochondria density. So actually didn't see this one before, but I only have one risk allele, so that's not from both parents. But so again, I like to look at 2 risk alleles from our red flags. But this can be improved with cold exposure, cold showers, cold plunge, cryotherapy, dunking your head in ice cold water. The cold receptors most concentrated in your head, face, chest can increase this fasting and exercise. So I've talked a lot in some videos about mitochondria capacity and density. I think doing the interval training for me would help with the density part. So I may best do those sprint interval trainings that I've been trying to do more. I'm not a big cold therapy except for today, since I'm constantly sweating in this sauna office here. I'm like dripping wet. Right now I'm in the sauna, and I think cold plunge sounds really good right now. So anyways, we want to look at that. And this is what I do for my clients and for myself. Kind of looking at, okay, how should I adjust my training program? How should I adjust my recovery program, my nutritions? Lastly, we can go into sleep, looking at heart rate variability score. I shared mine today on my Instagram, Coach Debbie Potts. I like to remember when I see other people's stuff. So if my HRV was higher than you ever see, remember, comparison is the thief of joy. So maybe you don't see that level, but you want to just look at your heart rate variability, your baseline, and what you can do to improve it, because it's going to be different. So remember that. And we get sleep, stress, neurobehavioral. Lastly, just want to show microbiome test would go here. Important flora to look at. TMO, bacteria, chronic disease. So lastly, just show you important one to look at. Cardiovascular risk. Look at what your parents, family members. This is a marker. You can see genetically, I'm way over on the right cardiovascular disease. If you're like me, focus on recreating your current self so you can create your future self to be ideally your best self and live your best life. Feel your best, move your best, look your best as you age. This is what I want to know. Do you want to know this? Do I need to do anything differently so I avoid having cardiovascular disease? So what markers do we want to look at? This genetic risk assessment based on 27 different genes, based on a study, they identified these in 2015. 31 to 72% increase in cardiovascular disease risk based on these genetic factors alone. All right. Do I need statins? No, thanks. Now, here are my markers that are looking at this. I need to get LP little a. Now, APOB is 89. That's higher than I want. I know I was reading Peter Attia's info. It wants like 20, 30. So how do I get that down under 60? So I need to figure that out. Total cholesterol is high, but my HDLs are oddly always been high. I've had people go, what's wrong with you? Your HDL's 130, this is 127. Triglycerides are good. What I really want to look at, as I said, the LP, little particle size, APOB, the CRP is inflammation we talked about, triglycerides. So only red flag I think is APOB. I think that's higher than I want it based on Peter Attia's book and research. And my cholesterol is higher, but I don't eat high fat diet. I focus on more of the meat, but I think that's more of my genetics. So I have 2 risk alleles, increased risk of high blood pressure, greater risk for diabetes, increased cardiovascular disease, reducing saturated fat intake. So this is what I question. I'd like to do more research on this. Does that really mean saturated fat? What studies did they do? So looking back on where they figured this out. Does really saturated fat? Is it something else? Is it nitric oxide? What else can impact blood pressure? So we want to look at all this. Dementia, again, other markers are looking at homocysteine, CRP, vitamin D is only 43. See, look, I'm outside obviously all the time. I try to stay out of the sun in the shade, but I'm swimming. My vitamin D is just 43. I've taken a supplement too. We want to look at this brain drive neurofactor. That's why exercise is good for me. Hot sauna, cold plunge, those improve brain drive neurofactor. Rhonda Patrick talks about that all the time. So this is why I think it's helpful to get ahead of your disease. It's chronic disease. I don't want to have what my dad got. I want to be healthy. So I gotta look at all these obesity genes. I've got high A1C. This is a good one to look at. Fasting glucose is 90. Fasting insulin's 4.3. So my insulin's good. But I need to test this every 3 to 4 months, 6 months max. You should get this twice a year, your blood work, to know I am prone to insulin resistance type 2 diabetes. So why wait every year to get your A1C? And why not ask your doctor to get tested on HOMO, IR, or fasting insulin, or just do it yourself? There's so many options. Why wait till you're type 2 diabetic? You can control it now. So this is a big one. Just remember, I have 2 risk alleles for IRS1 SNP. That's increased resistance for IR diabetes. But I don't know. See, this is why I question these studies. In response to high fat diet, does that mean high crappy fat? Bad fats versus natural meat, ancestral fat that's naturally high in fat. So I think we need to look at when studies are done and look up these studies, because this doesn't make any sense to me. I have increased risk for insulin resistance and diabetes in response to diet high in fat, but mitigated by a high carb, low fat diet. Doesn't make sense, right? So we got to look at more specific studies on this IRS1 SNP. What type of fat are you talking about? Insulin resistant scores, and it talks about that. So anyways, that's what I do. And then I look at the DNA company. I can look at reports and see what they say. They kind of a different presentation, your carbohydrate profile. Again, it's showing me I have reduced carb diet is best for me. Getting from fruits, vegetables, other fiber, looking at all that. So that's how they present the genetics on the DNA company. So you can get gluten sensitivity. Again, all tests say I'm sensitive. So I don't have celiac, but is this considered non-celiac gluten sensitivity? And I proved that, as I said, with my other tests. So that is what we see on here. You can see the DNA company. You can use a discount code if you ask me. Again, for everything, I can get a code. But you can look at all these markers here, all these reports. So it's pretty fun to dive into this. So let's finish up on here. The DNA company, what do they say about my fat? So here's the results, how to read them. Optimal, suboptimal, normal, poor. I want to be optimal. Dietary fats, reduced fats diet. I'm more likely to be candidate integrate reduced level of dietary fats. Reduce your consumption of saturated fats such as butter, ghee, cheese, watchful eye. 20% should be olive oil, avocados, nuts, and seeds instead of more saturated fats. So 2 tests say that. I need to pay attention that I'm not getting more than 20%. Now, what do they get this from? Here's all these markers: FTO, TCF, 7L2, suboptimal, elevated blood sugars from high saturated fat diet. So again, what do they classify high saturated fats? To me, this is natural, having butter and ghee, but cheese, what saturated fat? So I need to dig into this rabbit hole. So that is FTO. I'm likely to feel full, and how likely am I to overeat? Moderate. Anyway, so I'll stop. But that's what we're looking at. You can see kind of looking at recommendations for me. And then I was looking at too, ChatGPT, what are animal based for folate and choline? So liver, poultry liver, eggs, seafood, crab, fish, good folate. Folate can be found in some cheese and milk. What are some options for choline? Egg yolks, liver, meat, pork, chicken, fish, milk, cheese, yogurt, poultry. Because other options, not everyone wants to have vegetables. So I was trying to find animal-based, collagen-rich foods, bone broth, and collagen supplements help gut health. Fermented dairy products, they're not fiber, but fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, certain food cheeses can help. Probiotics for healthy microbiome. You can get fiber-filled psyllium husk, inulin, fructose, or plant-based prebiotic fibers. Acacia fiber. You can get prebiotic additives, kefir, aged cheese, fermented fish, yogurt, smoothies, add things together. So looking at, what should we eat? Here's what I'm deficient in. Do I need plant-based diet? A lot of people would argue that ancestral health, looking at more meat-based. So N equals 1, personalized programming. That's what I do. If you want to learn more, get a discount code on the DNA company. Let me know. I know the Clarity Report I'm getting accounts set up with them soon, but that's an interesting report to get as well. I really like their presentation. So if you want to learn more about investigating what you should do so you have more precision medicine, personalized approach is really looking at testing and not guessing. I would do a blood chemistry panel, a gut panel, which is stool test. And then if you can do organic acids, a urine test, something to get your hormones, a saliva test. And if you want extra, depending on how much money you want to spend, a food sensitivity test is helpful. A wheat zoomer test to know how wheat and different parts of the wheat react in your body, as well as that test from Private Wellness that I've done a podcast on my wheat zoomer test. It shows your LPS levels. So if you've been following around videos on podcasts and social media on your microbiome, leaky gut, endotoxemia, it's that LPS bacteria from cells that die is an endotoxin, so toxin. And then if you have a leaky gut, holes in your gut wall lining, those toxins escape from your gut through that lining. Kind of what Dr. Tom O'Brien talks about, that cheesecloth. And so you get the cheesecloth has tears. It's not supposed to go through that lining of the gut wall lining. Now we have this chronic inflammation going on. So we want to get rid of those foods that are causing inflammation, those stressors. We want to heal and seal your gut. And then we can work on balancing your body out and restoring homeostasis as balance, and results should feel more energy, vibrant, and prevent those chronic diseases as we age. So pass to not guess is our goal. And I think doing those genetics is really helpful. All right, I'm going to hydrate more and go for my movement break, maybe a run, but I'm going to listen to my body. And if I don't really feel like running, my secret is the downhills run and then uphills walk flat. We'll see what happens. So I listen to my body. I can't force fake a run. It just doesn't happen. So talk to you later.